Hi, and welcome to Pastor Chat. In this case, the pastor is chatting. We're today getting to talk to Mel Brewer, who is our children's director. And we don't call her a pastor, she doesn't have that title, but we call her a children's director. But she indeed is a shepherd of our children, and we have gladly entrusted Mel and Chris, who works alongside her with this great
Sure.
task. So, Mel, welcome to
Thank you.
Pastor Chat. Glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here.
Man, I've been looking forward to this for a long time. Uh, so, first of all, let's just hear your story. Tell us about your upbringing, who
Well,
your folks are, and how you grew up.
I was born in Louisville. I've lived in a lot of different places. My dad is a retired pastor, and I was fortunate that I was born into a home of Christian parents, and just from a young age, was in church and was taught the scriptures. Both of my parents leading people to Christ is just has always been a part of who they are.
Right.
And so I came to know the Lord at a young age. Knew that I was a sinner and knew that I had sinned and needed to trust Jesus and did and was baptized there in at Beth Haven Baptist Church in Louisville,
Beth
Kentucky.
Haven.
hmm And at the old Beth Haven, since then, um,
Was Tom Wallace pastor
he
there then?
was. Tom Wallace was the
Tom
pastor.
Wallace was an incredible preacher. A lot of our folks wouldn't know who Tom Wallace was, but
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
he was a phenomenal pulpiteer preacher. Yeah.
I'm going blank on the pastor before him, but he is a good friend of my dad's to this day, and it'll come to me in a minute. But when my dad became a believer, it was before Tom Wallace, and then Tom Wallace came, and so
Yeah, when I was a kid, there are a lot of kids were bookworms. I was a tapeworm. I listened to sermon tapes,
yeah.
and I remember getting a tape of Tom Wallace preaching, and talking about going to. I think he went to Tennessee Temple,
He did. Bradley
and
Price was I don't know if you knew Bradley Price, but he
no,
was the music
yeah, I
director
knew,
there.
I know of him. Didn't
hmm
know him. Uh, Tom Wallace told the story on that tape of how somebody told him go out to a restaurant every day at noon or whatever, and they'll give you a meal. And while he was at Tennessee Temple,
Okay.
and it's like this is the way the Lord provided for
Right.
him, and they'd give him enough to eat for like 24 hours, and
Oh,
he'd come
yeah.
back and he just talked about the Lord's provision for
Right.
him and stuff that happened.
I
And
remember him being such a soft-spoken,
yeah,
you know. I was young, but I remember him being gentle.
yeah, and
So
yeah, he was a phenomenal preacher. And so you were baptized there at
I
Beth Haven.
was.
How'd you get to Louisville? I mean, to Frankfurt.
Well, my dad followed Bradley Price, who became a pastor in Indiana, and my dad followed him to Indiana and became an associate pastor. And while we were there, my grandmother came down and was dying of cancer, and so my dad packed us up and moved us home so that my mom could be close to her. And after she passed away, he took a church here in Frankfurt, Bethel Baptist Church out of Winton Road, and so we moved there when I was 15. So that's how I ended up in Frankfurt. Since that time, they've moved back to North Carolina,
Yeah.
and so
Uh,
that's where I met Chris. So
you met Chris
at
at
Bethel.
Bad Bethel.
Right.
Yeah.
The funny story is Frank, his father was one of the moving men that came to our house and helped move
Helped move the
us.
preacher.
Yes, helped move the preacher. And
Yeah.
to hear his stories of me and my siblings at that point, of course, who knew, all these years later, I would marry his son, but um, just sweet how it all came together.
How old were you when you met Chris?
Um, I was 15, and
When
I,
you
I
moved in?
remember him coming into Sunday school, and it was just a small country church at the time. And I do remember thinking, well, that was worth the move, you know. But it was not at all love at first sight. He was older than I was, and he left for college, and I graduated from Franklin County and graduated at 17. So when he came home after his freshman year at UK, I was just getting out of school, and we went on a first date and really never looked back. I mean,
Really?
yeah.
So, once you went on the date, did it happen pretty quickly?
No, because I was just 17 and
Uh-huh.
he had just started at UK. Um, and so we actually dated 2 years um, after, we got married when I was 19. We had the bright idea that we could tell his parents, since they were renting an apartment for him at UK, that we could just, they could just rent us an apartment and we'd get married. And they went along with
Oh
it.
yeah.
And so it was a good deal for us. And we were ready to be married.
W.A. Criswell used to say, two can live as cheaply as
Oh,
one.
we could.
If one of you will go hungry and the other will go naked.
It was about like that. It was pretty close.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
so you were 19 when you
When
got
we got
married?
married, and then our first son was born. Chris graduated in May, and then our son was born in December of the following year. So
So you were 20 when he was born?
2021. I was
21?
just getting ready to turn 20 when we got married. So
Okay, gotcha.
21 when Christopher was born.
Well, that's
So
pretty young.
yes.
So
But look now they're grown, and I'm still pretty young.
yeah, that's
So,
exactly right.
yeah.
And, I like the same thing when Tanya and I had our boys young. And, like, when we moved to Louisville for me to teach at Southern, all the other guys that, we were young then, Moeller and all these young professors that were coming, conservative professors coming with Al Moeller to sort of take over the
Yeah.
place. Tanya and I, our kids were older than
Right.
everybody else's. They had all waited
Yes,
until
yeah.
after college to get married, after seminary to have kids. Tanya and I had them, we
did
got married
too.
and
I
had
mean,
kids,
it
and
was just
so we were the youngest parents of older kids, and we've been the youngest grandparents. I like that, frankly.
we do too. I feel like we're still young, and we do have a grandson, and we. I just feel like we didn't lose anything at all by that. I mean,
No.
it was the way it was meant to be. So
Yeah,
it was
absolutely.
good.
So you and Chris have been married how long now?
It was 30 years in August.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
30 years in August. Now, of the staff here at Buck Run, I think you've been here longer than anybody. Is
It'll
that
be
right?
8 years. Well, it was 8 years in
I'm
July.
not talking about.
Oh,
I'm not
you
talking
mean
about
as
on
far as-
staff. I mean at Buck Run.
Oh, 25.
25 years
We
you've been a
came
member
when
of Buck
Kristen
Run.
was 4 months. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
25
So there's several things about
Well,
that.
we actually visited like a year or so before we came back. We were in the small. They were building the building, and so we were in the small chapel, and it was just packed.
In the old building.
Yes, and
Yeah.
they would video, the services, and so the camera, when we got there, the camera was just right above. It was picking up everything that was happening, and we tell the story because it's just true. Our son, we just let him sit on my lap because there was, nowhere else to go, and he's sitting on my lap, and he was so wiggly that I pinched him on the leg and
Yeah, that's-
whispered in his
that was
ear,
one of my mom's moves.
because I couldn't get up and leave, and Chris said, when we got in the car, he said, we can't go back. Like, he was so bad, we can't go back. And we didn't. We didn't go back for about a year. And once they got into the new building,
So
we
that
came
would have
back.
been what, 94?
It was in 94.
94. They built
We
the
joined
new.
January of 94. So,
Wow. So you.
95. January of
Yeah.
95.
Okay. Yeah, because they had just got
Yeah.
in that building. So you've well, tell me about the experience of like coming to Buck Run. So in 94, 95. How did the Lord confirm to you this was the place for it? What was it about Buck Run then that attracted you and held you?
It's funny. When I think of one of the things that brought us here, and he probably doesn't necessarily know this, but Bruce McCutcheon. I mean, even
Bruce
all
McCutcheon.
those years ago,
Yeah,
Bruce McCutcheon was just so welcoming, and I will say too, Brother Bob. I mean,
Yeah.
when Brother Bob preached and when Brother Bob prayed, you you knew that the Lord was, doing a work and
Yeah.
in and through him, and we had come from a small, we'd come from Bethel. My dad had moved back to North Carolina, and we kind of wanted to kind of just slip in the back door, and be somewhere where we
You wanted to be observers and not participants for a while?
for a little while,
Yeah.
and I'm glad it didn't necessarily stay like that,
Yeah.
but it was a safe place for a while, just to,
Well,
yeah.
that was a great moment in Buck Run's history. I want to talk about it. Somewhere in there was the first time I ever heard of Buck Run. I was pastoring at Ashland Avenue in Lexington, and we were having a tremendous growth there. And Bob Jackson reached out to me, and hey, I hear great things are happening at Ashland Avenue.
Right.
And he invited Chuck Henderson and I came over for an event that Bob had with the discipleship program they were using. I forget the guy's name. But we came and sat in on that and talked to Bob. And so that was the first time I ever came to Buck Run, would have been in the 90s, right at that time.
Right in there.
Tom Rayner's book, Eating the Elephant, came out, church
Right.
growth book. And there was a chapter called The Miracle at Buck Run that
Right,
talked
for
about
sure.
that. So it was a time of just phenomenal growth.
It was.
There's a backstory there that a lot of people don't know. Bob had been here as a pastor in the 70s and for 7 years, went down to, I want to say Alabama, back to Alabama. And down there, while there, he has a heart attack.
Right.
And I think it had an emotional toll
Right,
on him as
for
well.
sure.
He was out of the ministry for a while. And when the Buck Run was looking for a pastor in 1990, Buddy Costigan, who chairman of the committee, chairman of everything, Buddy was just just one of the most
Right.
trusted men in the church.
For sure.
And he called Bob, and Bob told him, he said, I'm really not in ministry now. And Bob told me that Buddy said to him, well, Bob, if you'll take a chance on Buck Run, we'll take a chance
Wow.
on you.
Yeah.
It's just, to me, a phenomenal moment. It
For
says so
sure.
much about Buddy and the church
Right.
and Bob. And Bob really didn't know. I mean, he'd been out of the saddle, so to speak. And he comes here with just a determination to be totally dependent on the Lord.
And he was. Yeah.
And phenomenal things
Right.
happened. The
Right.
church just has this incredible growth
Yeah.
out of that tiny little building
Right.
that necessitates the building of the new building. And you
Right.
came right at that moment
Right in
where,
there, for sure.
yeah. So there was a golden spot there prior to the flood in 97 when they moved in the new building.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the flood in 97
Yeah,
where
the
the
flood
church,
in
there was
97 was-
momentum. And
Yeah. That was rough. It
yeah,
was.
and the flood of 97, Buck Run then has to meet in the high school
Right.
for 6 months.
Right.
What was it?
We did, and I said, everybody had to go get tetanus shots because we were working on the building. You're walking through there. Never forget walking in, and Chris had a water hose in his hand, just spraying the walls. It was just
Wow.
yeah. So yeah, we did. We met at the gym, and
Well, you've had a little bit of experience with momentum being stopped by natural disaster, and we're going to rely on your
Pick back
expertise
up.
again.
Yeah.
Because here we are,
We
we
are.
were really at a period of momentum prior to this, and we're
It's a great reset, though. I mean,
You know,
you got to look at it like
you see God's mercies along the way in everything He does, even in an awful thing like this.
yeah. You can
I would be lying if I didn't admit that Tanya and I have enjoyed
right.
more time together than we've had in ages.
Well, that's we're busy, and I said,
Yeah.
the first couple weeks it was like, what a breather. Now you miss everything else. Of
Yeah.
course, it's a
What
I don't
it
wanna
has
do it
saved-
forever, but
it has saved
yeah.
me, and probably you too. You would say it's drive time.
oh for sure, yeah.
I'm not on the road as much.
Have you noticed that when you do drive it, it seems a little longer? Like when I said
Yeah.
I've gotten used to not driving it, but
Yeah.
I'm going to continue.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I
just
don't
part
mean
of the thing. Well, you have been our children's director since you said eight years. Is that right?
Be 8 years in July.
So since 2012?
I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, 2012. It would be 8 years. And you've just brought so much to our children's ministry. Talk to me about what it is you want our children's ministry to accomplish.
Well, when we started, you were gracious and sent me to Brazil, me and Tanya,
Yeah, Tanya took you down there
we
to
spent a
Manaus
week
to see.
with Penny Hatcher. And I can remember before I went, you had told me, and you may not remember, but you told me, you'll learn as you go. You'll learn this as you go. But I can remember thinking, I just need a clear direction. What it is it could look like, And anyways, we went to Brazil and spent a week with her. And it's just to watch what she does there was just,
Yeah.
and what the Lord has accomplished.
It's astounding. It's so funny. People think of we in America go help these poor people in these other countries. And so often it's exactly backwards. I've had this experience all over the world. I go places and I see things that.
To see their volunteers, one thing that
Yeah.
I said, their volunteers, not only do they, ride 2 hours on a bus and wait in line to get on it to get there, some of them, they gave all day Saturday preparing for what would happen on Sunday.
That's right.
And, the budget was zero.
That's right.
You didn't need a budget.
There's
the
no money.
story, the lesson that one of those, and they're young people, but one of the lessons that they taught, I still remember it. They told the story of the ascension of Jesus with a pineapple and 12 bananas. There was no budget that was needed,
Yeah.
and that story was just,
And you still remember it.
I still
and so
remember
did
it.
those kids that
For
watched
sure,
that.
yeah.
I've been down. I've preached in. They have these super conferences there at that church to sort of share what they do with other churches and pastors who can come. And I sat through their children's programming as
Right.
well and saw
What
the way they tell the stories. And they had
Each-
Jesus walking on the water. I remember they sort of acted out. The guy telling the story, and the disciples in the boat, and you just hang on there. And it was not cheesy. It's not like you see sometimes they're sort of cheesy.
No, it was deep.
Yeah, it's telling
Yes,
the Bible is
it
what
really
the Bible
was,
says.
yeah. And that's one of the things she had, she just really impressed on me, that you want them to know God. You want them to know His love for them. When they leave, you want them to know when they look back that they have been taught that His word is true. So I've tried to keep that. You want to plant seeds that, will someday lead them a step, as you call it, a step closer to Christ. You want it to, you want them to know that there's a plan. He has a plan for their life.
That's right.
And so,
One of the things I love about our children's ministry is I see us reaching just all kinds of kids.
right, yeah.
And I want to talk about that some. So, our children's ministry, first of all, there's a lot of different kinds of faces in there. We have different ethnicities.
For sure.
We have many different home situations. We've got special needs kids. Of course, some of our parents have intentionally adopted special
sure.
needs children, and of course, we have some people that have biologically had special needs kids.
Right.
And you have found a way to minister to each of these kids in the way that they need, and at a level that's appropriate.
Well, the Lord has He has provided it every step of that way.
Yeah.
As they have come, He has provided. I think of our special needs leaders, and Debbie Parks heads that up. Just about the time we really needed to open that class, the Parks came.
Yeah.
And her expertise in that is just phenomenal. But even in our other rooms, we've got some children who, their learning style may be different, and we really do have a good mix of leaders who that is their training.
It's an amazing thing. As you said, God has you just see the sovereignty of God
Oh,
at work. Is
yeah.
that He gifts the church with the people
He
whom He has
does.
gifted
And that's a
for
fun
that
part
service.
of. I mean, it really is a fun part of this. Is just to.
I
Yeah.
think of Alicia Wedding, who, first of all, it was my joy and privilege. I got to lead Alicia to Christ. I'll never forget it. Her in my office and talking to
Right.
her,
Right.
and wow, what God was doing in
sure.
drawing her to Himself, and here she came. She'd been a school principal and a teacher.
Right. And what a help she was when we moved into this building,
Yeah.
to set up our rooms and to, I mean, I didn't really know her well at all, and I mean, the Lord just brought us together, and
Yeah.
I need
I
those
mean,
people around me.
We could not have gone out and recruited
no,
better
no, even no.
than the Lord just brought to us the
sure.
people that we needed.
He has.
I mean, I've known Debbie Parks literally all my life. I had no idea she knew all that. I
Yeah,
mean, I just didn't know that aspect of her
To
life.
walk by and shares it so freely.
Yeah.
I mean, she has trained the staff that it's not just her. She has trained all of those around her,
Yeah.
and it's just it's
It
wonderful.
amazes me. We do our best to not let any kids fall through the cracks.
No,
That we really want to, and there are some children that we very happily. I mean, if there are kids whose needs are so great that we need to put a teacher one-on-one with them,
we do.
we do it.
We do.
We do that.
Our
And
people are good.
hallelujah. And man, what a blessing to these parents to see
yeah.
a church that doesn't just
No.
have a herd mentality. And well, these kids just have to fit in where they can fit in.
No,
We
it's-
really
it's a
try
good
and
thing.
minister to them in the way that they need. And
We really do.
what a
Yeah.
what a blessing that is to me.
It's a good.
And I will tell you, you do a phenomenal job with all of your staff and crew of teaching the Word of God. I
Right.
mean, to me, that's what Buck Run
Yeah.
does better than anything.
is,
I mean, from womb to tomb.
It is a
We're
priority
teaching the
of what's
Bible.
happening.
Yeah, it's just
It
it's
is.
what we do. It's what we're about.
We're not really. Our kids ministry is not really event driven. It is,
Yeah.
really scripture and driven.
Yeah, we
it's-
love
yeah.
events are great. They're
They
fun,
are,
but
but
they're all in service of what we're after is not
Right.
entertaining them.
No.
'Cause we can't compete. There's
There's
better
no
entertainment out
there
there,
is,
right?
yes.
Disney Plus will keep
And
them
I think our
entertained, but-
teachers have. I mean, they own that. It is a good thing to walk through and to hear each one of them in their own way.
Yeah.
The way they teach. Some of them are more, hands-on, crafty type, and
Right.
some are more science-based. But it's
very
been,
engaging.
It is.
All
yeah.
are very engaging,
It is.
and the Lord has just brought the right folks there.
Yes.
Mel, one of the things that I would say about you, I've been in ministry my whole adult life and worked with a lot of people. And I'm going to say one thing about you that is a superlative, that there is nobody I've ever seen who does this as well as you or even like you. You lead from behind like no one I've ever seen. In fact, I've never
For
seen.
better or for worse.
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah.
true. Whatever your leadership style is, right? Whatever it is,
It
for
is.
me, what I do is for
Right.
better or worse. There's an up and a downside to
Right.
all these things, but you're not a platform type person. You're not the person that's up front and hey, gang, come on.
No.
That's not you.
No.
And yet, you lead. There's no question you're the leader.
Right.
You make it happen, and people trust that leadership.
Right.
But you're almost never the platform person. So my question is, well, I think it's less a question than an observation. First of all, you really have to be comfortable. You have to know yourself, and you have to be comfortable with who you are
Right.
in order to do that, don't you? I mean, you got to be comfortable in your own skin.
I'm not wearing striped socks.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah,
I'm pretty much my own person.
yeah, you definitely
I'm
are.
teasing. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you're comfortable with who you are, and you have found a way to be who you are, and yet still make it happen.
Right.
And that's to me an amazing
I think
thing.
it's the people the Lord has sent. I mean,
It is.
They
I
really
mean,
do.
it's
Yeah,
a both and.
yeah,
You couldn't do it without cooperative,
for sure,
godly people.
for sure.
But frankly,
Well, thank you for
it's
that.
also possible to have cooperative, godly people who are crying out for a leader.
Right.
And it takes both things.
I want to cut. There's many times I'll be like, we've got to get on top of this because you want to lay out your direction and you want them to be so sure of the direction of what it is you're wanting that it just happens
Yeah.
that way. So, but it's a sweet place to serve.
Yeah,
I,
it
I
is.
could say that 100 ways. It really,
Oh, I mean, it's
yeah.
one of the things that I have the greatest delight in at Buck Run. It's
Right.
this children's ministry, and
Oh.
I just, what other church has this many young families?
Right. And what I've been with this now long enough that you're seeing the next. I think of people like Becky and Jason Cunningham have served all of these years in kids ministry, but have stepped up to serve in student ministry. And what a gift they were all of these years. And this could be talked about many families.
Right.
But then, just as they step up and he steps out of his role on Wednesday nights of leading and welcoming our children, you have Seth Womack who jumps right in there, who has young little ones. And it's just a good thing to see that as they are moving up, the Lord is sending, and we do have so many young people, young families.
Yeah, we do.
That,
And I love pointing it out that I think what God is built this church on is His Word. He's been faithful to His Word. And there are just so many churches out there that, you can't just teach the Bible. That's, you got to
yeah.
do this and that. You can't.
But, yeah.
You can't focus on the Bible. In fact, I mean, I've been to preaching conferences where they say, there's no way you can preach through a whole book. People aren't, a 2-year
Run.
series,
Yeah.
a 2-year series in a book,
Right.
that's just, And you can't get, you got to entertain kids. You can't do this. Everything about Buck Run says, no, what God blesses is His Word.
He
And
really
look at
does.
these
He really
young
does.
families that have come in, and they are committed. They want their children to
They
know
do.
the Word of God. They're hungry for it. Even during this COVID-19 stuff,
Yeah.
you're still,
We are.
tell us what you've been doing with the kids during this time. I mean, how are their teachers staying connected? How's our children's ministry
Well,
staying connected?
we have, the first week that we realized, this is going to be
It's going to be a while.
going to be a while. Basically, we gathered a contact team of teachers, and either our Sunday morning, Wednesday night, kind of left it open to whoever wanted to join in. We had over 30-some teachers who said, put me on the contact team. So children are, getting letters or either phone calls. Parents are receiving emails. Just trying to keep in touch with them. It's not really possible to drive by. We're so spread out,
Yeah, we are.
but kids do enjoy mail, and they do enjoy a phone call. So tried to keep up with them that way. We've also, they're getting a lesson every week that, parents can access. Kevin and D'Amica Jones have just been wonderful to continue teaching the lesson, just to give parents a place to start, and
Yeah.
the lesson itself has some questions, and, just so they can make it a part of their weekly, weekly.
It's been another way that during this time of isolation, we've still had connection,
Yes.
and it's been great. Let me just say this, as a grandfather, let alone the pastor, I'm so
Yeah.
blessed and encouraged that my grandchildren are a part of your ministry,
Good. That's a compliment. Thank you.
and
Thank you.
they love you. In fact, one of my favorite videos of any of my grandchildren is one of Harper. Harper would make stuff up, every now and then. She'd say, she said, Melbua said I think it was take a toy or something in the bathtub with her.
Eat the sucker.
Eat
the
a
sucker.
sucker in the bathtub.
You
Yeah, I
could eat the
said,
sucker.
Melbua said I could eat a sucker in the bathtub. And Tony said, who said that? Melbua.
She's funny.
And I want to point out that Harper, her middle name is Melanie, and she was named for you in
Well,
honor of
what
you.
an honor. Yeah.
Yeah.
We think the world of Harper's mom and dad.
Yeah, well,
And,
Seth, you and Chris were very instrumental in their courtship
well,
and encouraging and blessing them before they were married and afterwards too.
and afterward.
But I
Those
think,
were the good old days.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
four
we
kids ago.
we think the world of them.
Well, the Yorks, all of them, all generations of them, love you and
Wow.
Chris, and I just want to say this: you and Chris are a phenomenal team.
Well,
A lot of people don't know he's CEO of a power company, and yet, man, he is a teammate
He
with you.
is.
The two of you
I
function
cannot
as
imagine. Yeah.
I mean, together as a team. It's a beautiful picture of what marriage ministry looks like, and I mean
Right.
that not marriage, not ministry to marriages,
Right.
but a marriage
Isn't
that
it?
ministers.
Yeah.
And
The
you
Lord
guys,
was good just to like allow us to do this together.
yeah.
You know,
It's
it's
again, it's another one of those things we really want to project at Buck Run.
right.
That we're in this together. Our marriages are to be used of the Lord
Right.
together. It's a beautiful picture of the love of Christ for His
You know,
church.
he doesn't have a lot of downtime. He's busy. He's busy.
Yeah,
We have Saturday, and then of course Sunday, where we live, a ways away. Sundays are full days, and then he'll hit the ground again, Monday. And there's many times on the way home, we're talking about what had happened, and it's just what a gift that
Yeah.
we have that time together. To
yeah. And
he's
if you didn't see it happening like that, it would be hard to have the energy to keep it up.
oh, it's
But when
yeah,
you see what God's doing,
yeah,
it,
it's a good thing.
I know in my own life,
Yeah,
it keeps you passionate and motivated
it
and in it.
does. It does, and he is. I can't imagine doing it without him.
Well, you
Yeah.
guys do it
He
very well
he
together.
could walk a crying baby down that hall better than anybody I've seen. So
Well, I'm glad he does. I'm glad he does. Well, I like to conclude with what I call twinkling of an eye round. Just ask some random questions, and you just tell me your thoughts. Do you have a favorite children's book? A book that you like to read to children, hope to read to your grandkids when they're.
I just picked up the book that Seth had recommended during their family worship.
Oh,
The
yeah.
book on what every child should know about prayer.
Uh-huh.
In fact, I gave it to my daughter-in-law for Mother's Day yesterday, and she said, "Oh, I have this book," and I had already, and so I can't say it's a favorite book, but I am.
What's one on your heart now?
I do enjoy, he had recommended two different books, and so where I don't have little kids, it's hard sometimes to keep up with, the new
Yeah.
things that are out there. But both of those, when he recommended them, I ordered them the next day, and so. That,
Well,
yeah.
those are good ones. Do you have a favorite movie
Favorite movie? Well,
of
You-
any era?
I was going to say that probably the movie we watch the most, and it's just a funny movie, but it would have to be Christmas Vacation with Chevy Chase.
Oh, I love Christmas
Chris
Vacation.
and the only real reason is Chris. When Chris watches that movie, he will sit and laugh like like it's the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went to, I don't know if you can go to the Regal Cinemas, and at Christmas time you can buy a ticket and watch it, you can go
Big
and watch
screen.
it, yes. So
Yeah.
we have done this, kind of a tradition. So we showed up this year, and he was parking the car, and he dropped me off, and so I go in, and when he got there, got to go in, and he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, your ticket's not good." Well, you have to buy these tickets way in advance because they do sell out. And I'm like, "Oh, I'm sure it's good. I have the receipt here. Here it is on my phone. I'd emailed it, and I'd bought it for somewhere like in Texas." And so you could just see the disappointment on both of us, And I'm like, because that was my job, buy the ticket, And so we go to the front, and we're like, this is a tradition. We do this every year. And she was not budging. It was like, nope, you're not coming in. So we get in the car, and it's just like, you can just feel it over this silly movie. So we went home and rented it, and
watched it, but
Well,
yeah,
and I'm
it's
sure
just life
by,
went on.
by now you've been forgiven.
Oh yeah, I would think.
All right. Where were you the first time Chris kissed you?
Oh well, that was our first date.
Your first date. I'm
That was in
glad.
his room.
I'm glad to hear you admit it. Tanya, it was first date for me and Tanya too. So some
Yeah.
people like,
Yeah, 2 years was a long time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it is. All right. Favorite vacation spot?
Oh, well, if we're going to the beach, we'd like to go to the Dominican Republic.
The
But
DR.
if we're hiking, which is, I mean, we really do enjoy the national parks. So um, we went to Acadia National Park last summer, or
Yeah.
a couple falls ago, and it was.
Have you been to Yellowstone yet? I've never done Yellowstone.
Oh,
I really want to do
man.
Yellowstone. It
We
just
took my
looks
parents to Yellowstone.
really.
We met them there, and my mom had always wanted to see it, and so I guess it's been about 3 years ago we went out there and took
Well,
them all over. And
I've got to follow your lead and go.
yeah,
I've got to do
you
that.
been to Yosemite?
No, I've not been out
Yeah.
west much at all. I've got to do it. Well, I've got some special gifts for you. Here is journaling through the Psalms, and I love the Psalms. And here, this
you.
is just
Thank
the
you.
Psalms and a place for you to write your own thoughts about it.
Thank you.
I'm a
I
great
do
believer
read a
in it.
Psalms every day, so thank you.
Oh, well, that'll be perfect for you. All right, now there's a collection of a bunch of stuff. All right.
I could have brought you a
Because-
bunch of stuff.
Because you are so radiant, here
Oh,
you have
thanks.
your soft white incandescent light. Now I could make jokes about that. I'm not going to,
I
but
wouldn't
Tanya
think
told me
so.
not to.
I
but-
don't think you want to do that.
and this is from Brazil.
Oh,
Since I know
good.
Brazil is figuratively new, this is a made by indigenous people there, and it is a whistle.
Oh,
It's
thank
with
you.
a tarantula on it. So,
Thank you.
all right.
I do like that, you know.
You always need helping hands. So here's your own little pair of helping hands.
you. Those are
You can
creepy.
also, they are
I don't
creepy.
want your creepy
They
stuff.
are creepy. I mean, they're real creepy. Have you ever
can
seen,
keep those.
what's her name that used to be on Saturday Night Live? She did the Small Hands singer. There, you can do your own character with those. So there's your helping
Thanks.
hands. All right. It's a jump drive.
I do need that.
Who's your one?
I do need that.
Who's your one jump drive?
Thank you.
Is on that. There you go. All right. The best. I've got you to the best. The best highlighter. My favorite highlighter.
Thank you.
This I will use no other highlighters now. My favorite highlighter. This is a 4A
Thank you.
liquid ink. I mean, it's really cool.
That is cool.
All right. The best pencil is a
Did you
Blackwing.
just clear off your counter
A
at home?
Blackwing 602. Well, maybe.
Hey, thank you for this.
But, all right, now to sharpen that, you need the best pencil sharpener.
Thank you.
And I mean, this, I don't even know what you call this, but I'm telling you, it's like made from a bullet casing or something. It is super cool. And
Thank you.
you've never seen such a sharp point on a pencil.
I am
as this-
excited to get this.
That this little thing will give you.
Thank you.
Trust
very
me on
much.
that. And I don't want Chris to be the only guy around here who's tatted up. So there's your own sleeve.
All right.
Now, we've got to see a picture posted somewhere of your tattooed arm. And because sometimes the guys around here, maybe we make you cry, there's your own tissues from courtesy of Delta. And because we're loud, there are your own
My
earplugs.
Thank
your
you very
earplugs. And in a Toomey bag
All right.
provided by
Thank
Delta
you.
One.
Thank
There.
you.
So anyway,
Those are nice, great gifts.
those are
Thank you.
fun gifts
Thank you.
that I hope you enjoy. And just a little way of saying thanks for being you.
Thank you.
You are truly a delight
Thank you.
as a friend, as a co-laborer for Christ, as the person who cares for our children. And man, we love you dearly. Thanks for being
appreciate
who you
that.
are.
Thank
all right.
you.
I'm so delighted you could join us tonight on Pastor Chat, and I pray it's been a blessing to you. I know you'll want to express your gratitude to Mel for all that she does. And remember, we're soon going to be back. See our webpage for the details about that coming up. And Lord willing, we'll get to see each other soon. May the Lord bless you, and we'll see you again next time.
Bye-bye.